Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hello, dear students. Welcome to another lecture. In this class, we are going to begin with the fourth poem of Class 8 Alternative English, Nagaland Board, The Last Bargain, written by Rabindranath Tagore. Now, this poem, as written by Rabindranath Tagore, is about a man who wanted himself to get an employer. He wanted to be hired. But he was looking for a good bargain. He wanted something good in return of offering his services to the other person. He came across a king who wanted to hire him with his power, but he refused. He came across an old man who wanted to hire him with his money, but he refused. He came across a woman who wanted to hire him with her smile, but he refused again. But at the end, he agreed to be hired by a little boy who had nothing to offer to him in return. Why did he say yes to the boy? Let us read the poem and find out the answer to our question. So, as I told you, a bargain is an agreement in which both parties promise to do something for each other. So there are two people and they both promise to do something for each other. Someone is looking for work, waiting to be hired. He strikes a bargain but thinks it is worthless. As I told you in this poem, we are going to read about a man who is looking for work and who wants to be hired. He strikes a bargain. He strikes a bargain with somebody, but he did not find it to be very vital. He found it worthless, unimportant. He tries twice again, but does not like either. So he again was offered something by somebody, but he did not like that either. Finally, in the last bargain, he was happy. So he found himself to be in a happy state when he struck a bargain at the end. Now, what was that bargain and why was that considered to be the best? Let us read the poem and find that out. Come and hire me, I cried, while in the morning I was walking on the stone-paved road. Sword in hand, the king came in his chariot. He held my hand and said, I will hire you with my power. But his power counted for naught, and he went away in his chariot. So the poet says, the man who is looking for a job for himself said, come and hire me. I cried while in the morning I was walking on the stone-paved road. So the man was walking on a road which was made by stone. So the man was walking on that road and he was crying. Crying means he was screaming, come and hire me. Sword in the hand, the king came in his chariot. Chariot, we all understand that vehicle in which the kings sit when they have to travel, which is driven by horse or an elephant maybe. So there was a king who was sitting in the chariot. He came, he had a sword in his hand, and he held my hand and said, I will hire you with my power. So when the king heard that the man wanted to be hired, the king held the man's hand and said that I will hire you with my power. But his power counted for naught. Naught means nothing. His power did not count for anything. His power did not matter anything to him. And he went away in his chariot. So the first person who wanted to hire the man was a king who came in his chariot. He had a sword in his hand and wished to hire the man with all the power that he had. But the man said no because he realized that power is something which is never indefinite. Okay, it will always come to an end. Maybe the king will lose some war, will lose his army, and will not be left with anything at all. So, power is always temporary and will never stay with you forever. And therefore, the man said no. He did not want to be hired with power. In the heat of the midday, the houses stood with shut doors. I wandered along the cooked lane. An old man came out with his bag of gold. He pondered and said, I will hire you with my money. He weighed his coins one by one, but I turned. So, in the heat of the midday, so in the morning, the man met a king. He continued to walk along, and now it was the midday. It was very hot, and the houses stood with shut doors. So, since it was very hot, it was middle of the day. So, people remained inside their houses and had shut their doors. And the man kept on wandering along the crooked lane, wandering, moving around, roaming along the crooked lane. An old man came out with his bag of gold. But then he saw an old man who came out with his bag, which was full of gold, which was full of money. He pondered and said, thought. So that old man thought and said, I will hire you with my money. That I want to hire you with the money that I have. He weighed his coins one by one, but I turned away. So that man, he started weighing his coins. He started telling the man how much money he had. But the man said no. He turned away. He said no. Why did the man say no to this, old man? Because money again is not going to stay with you forever. The services of the man will only be with that old man till he has money, which again we don't know for how long he would be having. So the man again said no because he understood, he realized that money also cannot be retained by you throughout your life. It was evening, the garden hedge was all aflower. The fair maid came out and said, I will hire you with a smile. A smile paled and melted into tears, and she went back alone into the dark. So, the morning, the man met a king who wanted to hire him with his power. The man said no because he realized that power did not value so much. Then in the afternoon, the man came across an old man who wished to hire him with the money he had. But the man again said no because according to him, money also would not remain with you forever. In the evening now, he went to a garden, and the garden hedge was all aflower. Hedge, the edges, the fences of the garden were all covered with flowers. The fair maid came out and said, I will hire you with a smile. Fair maid, a beautiful young girl, came out and said that I will hire you with a smile. That I want you to work for me, and in return, I will offer you my smile. I will give you happiness. But that very moment, the man noticed that the smile of that girl paled, faded, melted into tears. She started crying and then she went back alone into the dark. that made the man realize that smile and happiness are also not going to be with you forever. This is a cycle of life. Happiness always follows sorrow, and sorrow in return follows happiness. So he understood that happiness and smile are temporary in nature and are not going to be with you throughout your life. And so the man continued to walk ahead looking for his employer. The sun glistened on the sand and the sea waves broke waywardly. A child sat playing with shells. He raised his head and seemed to know me and said, I hire you with nothing. From henceforth, that bargain struck in child's play made me a free man. So, now the sun glistened on the sand. It was the time for the sun to set. It was dawn, and the sun glistened. Glistened means shone. The sun was shining on the sand, and the sea waves broke waywardly. The sea waves were coming inside, were coming into the beach. A child sat playing with the shells. So there was a child who was sitting there and was playing with shells. He raised his head and seemed to know me and said, so this child, he raised his head and he seemed to know me. The man, felt that the child actually knew me. The child somehow understood my problem. The child somehow understood my concern and said, I hire you with nothing. So the child said to the man that I want you to work with me, to work for me, but in return, there is nothing that I want to offer you. There is nothing at all that I want you to fix a bargain of. And from henceforth, from there onwards, that bargain, that agreement held perfectly well with the man, and he started playing with the child because he felt like a free man. He realized that yes, one always wishes to work, one always looks for an employer, but not at the stake of one's freedom. It is one's freedom, it is one's liberty that matters the most. And that is the reason why the man said yes to the child, because the child did not offer anything in return to the man, and it was only and only freedom with which the man was working with the child. So with this, my dear students, we come to the end of this beautiful poem written by Rabindranath Tagore. So the first person who wished to hire the man was the king. In the morning, when the man was screaming, come and hire me, a king came with a sword and offered to hire the man with his power. But the man realized that power did not count for anything and could end any time, any day, and therefore said no to him and continued to move ahead looking for his employer. The second person he came across was an old man who wanted to hire the man with the money. The man again said no because money is not going to last forever. It will certainly come to an end. And so the man disagreed to be hired and continued moving further. Again, the third person to have offered to hire the man was a beautiful young lady. This lady offered to hire the man in return of her smile. But the man realized that smile and happiness are temporary in nature and are not going to be with you throughout, because your smile, your happiness is always going to be followed by sorrow, and sorrow will again bring happiness with it. And therefore the man continued further. The man at the end met a little child who was playing with his shells on the beach. This boy seemed to have understood the man's problem and therefore said that I want to hire you with nothing, that I am offering you freedom. You are free to be here, you are free to be with me and to play with me, and there is no bargain that I am striking with you. This affected the man, this struck the man, and he understood the boy's bargain, and therefore he agreed to be with the young little boy with nothing at all, because he understood the value of being free, of being liberal and working, not in return of something which is materialistic, because it will not be with you forever, but something innate and eternal like one's freedom and satisfaction. So with this, my dear students, we come to the end of the explanation of this poem. Let us move on to the discussion of the back exercises. So who is the speaker in the poem? The speaker in the poem is a man who wanted to be hired by somebody. The king sword in his hand suggests power. The old man offered the speaker a lot of money. Why did he turn down the offer? So the man turned down the offer because he understood that money is not going to last forever. Find in the poem the lines that match the following. I have nothing to give you except goodwill and cheer. The last line, the boy said, I hire you with nothing. Her happiness was no more than sorrow in disguise. This was used for the girl. Her smile paled, melted into tears, and she went back into the darkness alone. The king's might was not worth much, so the power counted for naught, N-A-U-G-H-T. How did the speaker feel after talking to the child on the beach? So after talking to the child on the beach, the speaker felt free. The speaker felt not obliged to be with somebody and understood the importance of working with happiness, with goodwill, and with freedom. And that was the reason why he accepted the offer of a child. So with this, my dear students, we come to the end of this poem. I hope the poem is clear to you. So I shall see you all now in my next lecture.